is the theme to the show. The show is all about you. Not you, but you and your story. Because everybody has a story with Jeff Seltzer. Everybody has a story with Jeff Seltzer. Brought to you by JeffSeltzer.com.
Hello and welcome to Everybody Has a Story with Jeff Seltzer. I am your host, Jeff Seltzer, and I am back from the break. Thank you for once again joining me as I've been off for the last 4 weeks, largely gallivanting around the country. Lots of busy stuff going on between spring break, took a work trip, lots of really, really cool stuff. Before getting into what I've been doing and how the last week or so or month or so has been going, I did first of all want to thank Marcus Brandon, friend of the show, for that song that opened the show today. He, a few weeks ago, was probably right as soon as I was about to go on break, sent me a text and was like, hey, check this out. And I was just blown away. He unsolicited created a theme song for the show. So we officially have a theme song for the show now. So Marcus, thank you so much. I'll probably start playing it more in the intro and then the outro of the show as well. I think it's fun. It's really cool. So really excited that, I feel professional now, right? Like every podcast, every show, every whatever has its own theme song. And now I have my own one too. So Marcus, once again, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. Did want to talk, I guess now that we're here, a little bit about what I've done over the last 4 weeks. I got a couple of different things to talk about this week. And then eventually we will call it a week. So this week, there is no guest. It's just me. I will have plenty of guests over the next 2 months, as I did spend a lot of time over the break soliciting guests, meeting people, scheduling things. So I do think that I have a pretty solid lineup for the next 7 or 8 weeks as of right now. Hopefully everything goes according to plan. Hopefully everybody shows up as scheduled. We'll see what happens. I mean, as I've seen in the past, one of the most challenging things about this podcast is scheduling guests, getting people to show up. And, life gets in the way, right? So adjusting, stuff like that. But I have a really cool lineup of guests, which I'll talk about later in the show, but wanted to kind of give you a heads up that is what's going on. So what did I do over the break? So over the break, over the 4 weeks, I did a lot of different things. I went to Austin, Texas for a work trip, which usually I wouldn't talk about a work trip, but this was one that I was pretty excited about. And I posted quite a bit about over on LinkedIn and on various social medias. So without getting too in detail, went to a conference with a supplier or a company that I utilize a lot at work. And I was a guest speaker. So I was able to go on stage, talk about my experiences, talk about different things that I've done, best practices, things like that. I got a huge picture of my head on the huge screen, which is always really cool to see. Really, really just funny to see like me standing there in front of a ginormous picture of my own head. So really, really fun to see. Got a lot of great interactions there. Met a lot of people, some locally, some from around the country, some from around the world. So that was really, really cool. I did actually meet up with next week's guest. So if all goes as I expect or hope, next week's guest should be an author or someone who's done a lot of cool things. And that podcast for next week was set up based on my conversation with him last, back in Austin when I was at the conference. So you'll hear a lot more about that next week. Other things that I did. So when I came back from there, that upcoming weekend right afterwards, went with a couple of my buddies. I went with John, with Rich, with Jeremy, and a few others to go see Daniel Tosh. Most people, or some people remember Daniel Tosh from his old show on Comedy Central called Tosh.0. Really funny stuff. I mean, it was, 10, 15, 20 years ago, where I basically sat there and made fun of YouTube videos. He's a comedian. He now has a podcast. And for me, it was really cool to see because he is one of the inspirations behind this podcast. I think I mentioned this in one of the earlier episodes. Daniel Tosh launched a podcast about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago. And it's not your traditional like podcast of bringing celebrities on or talking about, things. Like for the most part, like he brings on like, locals, people that are under the radar. Like one week he talked to like his pool boy or his wife's gynecologist, like various people that you would never really expect or think would be on a podcast as a guest with someone as big name as Daniel Tosh. But like basically like he brings people on and they have a conversation. He learns about them. He talks about their story. He makes jokes. That's what he does. But in any event, so we saw him at the State Theater in New Brunswick. Really, really cool. Really funny. He was on for like an hour or so, give or take. But really raunchy, really dirty. Definitely, some comments that you're kind of like looking at it and saying, "Wow, he said that." But overall, Daniel Tosh was amazing. I mean, he's still got it after all these years. He's still very funny. So really excited that I did see him perform live. Big fan of comedy, and he's one of the greatest ones out there today, I think. So that was really cool. Not long after Daniel Tosh, about a week or so later, myself, my wife, and my kids went on vacation to Turks and Caicos. A couple of notable and really cool things about that, I would say, is first of all, anytime that I do get to go to a new country, I do everything I can to make sure that I get credit from a podcast perspective. So I think I've said over the number of weeks that currently this podcast has been streamed at least once in 5 different continents, 17 different countries. We recently got a bunch over in Europe and the Middle East, which was really cool to see. Turks and Caicos was not one of them until my trip. So I listened to the podcast just to kind of, I always do just for research, look back to my old podcasts, see what I can learn from what I've done. But also specifically when I travel internationally, so I can kind of, check the box that was listened to at least once in that nation. So on my list of countries, now I have 18 separate countries, as Turks and Caicos is the 18th country we have. At this point, still waiting for hopefully somebody in Africa and Antarctica to stream the podcast at least once, so I can hopefully pick up the other 2 continents that I'm missing. I am working with somebody I know from work, a buddy of mine, Ben, who has, I think, family and or friends in Africa. So I'm hopeful, per what he has said, that somebody will listen to it in Africa, so that way I can get credit for that. Then I'll have to take a trip to Antarctica at some point. Hopefully they have data or bandwidth or Wi-Fi. Get credit for it there, and we go for it from that point as well. So hopefully that works. We'll see what happens at that point. So back to Turks and Caicos. So great trip, a lot of fun. My first time there. I've been to the Bahamas once or twice. I've been to Japan once last summer. But outside of that, I've never really left North America. Turks and Caicos is very nice. We stayed at a resort, one of those all-inclusive deals. Lots and lots of fun. A couple of notable things I would call out. So we did spend a decent amount of time at the beach. As you guys all know, I am super pale and super white. If you're watching the video, you'll see I didn't get that much tan or that much color, which was by design, largely because I do basically have 2 colors. I like white and like dark red, like burning. So for me, I was trying to make sure that I did not burn. I do have some marks. One of my daughters mentioned to me that when I took my baseball cap off, you could see a bit of a line like on top of my forehead. It looks like, part of my forehead is super pale and the rest of my face has a little bit of color to it. But luckily I did not get sunburnt like I could by design. So super, super happy that I did not burn. My dermatologist will be very happy as well. And we'll see from there how I can, obviously stay healthy, I guess, as much as I can be. Some just notes that I took over the trip just to see what I can kind of talk about here as well. Funny comment on the flight to Turks and Caicos. There was a lady sitting next to me, not my wife, somebody else, on the flight. She looked over at the flight attendant at one point and she ordered 2 seltzers, which for me I always find funny, being that it's my last name. I think I probably made a dumb comment about how you can't have my kids or something, but I thought it was pretty funny. She thought it was funny as well. It's one of those things where having a last name like Seltzer definitely, is a weird thing. And the fact that growing up, seltzer wasn't that popular, but now that, spiked seltzers and different drinks and stuff like that, it definitely is something that's a little more commonly said or commonly used. And in the back of my mind, it's just something funny too. So it's a funny name. It's my name. It is what it is. Something else on one of the flights that I took, might have been my Disney World flight that I took. The man sitting next to me on that flight dumped his ginger ale in my lap, which was, a great way to start the trip. But I guess that happens. He apologized. It is what it is, right? Gravity happens. Small situations on the flight, you never know what's going to happen. He didn't mean to do it. It was what it was. I accepted his apology. I got up, got some paper towels, cleaned up the seat, and everything was all good to go there. 2 more things, I guess, to talk about, and then we can move on to another topic as well. So I think I was talking about Turks and Caicos. Now I'll talk a little about Disney World, as I was saying. Disney World, we went there because my daughters, through their high school band and orchestra, were performing there. So obviously, as the Disney dorks that we are, we had to go. A lot of fun. Watched Robin, my older daughter, marching down Main Street. Got lots of really cool photos and videos and stuff like that. While we were there, we also got to check out the La Cava experience over at Epcot in Mexico. My first ever tequila tasting experience. Beth and I had wanted to do that for a number of years. We finally got a chance to do it. It was a lot of fun, really, really cool. Apparently, the guy who led the session is an infamous like tequila expert from like Tequila Mexico. Which who knew that Tequila Mexico is an actual location? It's where he's from, where his family's from. I guess he's part of the tequila legacy or something like that. I don't know, but either way, he seemed like a very nice guy. He educated us. I did have a chocolate covered grasshopper. I think it was for the first time, and probably for the last time as well, because that was really not something that I enjoyed. But I figured I'd try it out while we were there. Um, Another thing, so I've talked a lot about the fact that I do get motion sick. I've thrown up on helicopters, airplanes, trains, buses, parasailing, any kind of vehicle you could think of, I've probably gotten sick on. Um, and I generally have a bit of a tracker in terms of like, when was the last time that I got sick on an airplane? Most people in their lives never get sick on airplanes. I've easily gotten sick on airplanes like dozens of times. When I say sick, I mean like throwing up, like vomiting. You get the point. In any event, my most recent time getting sick on an airplane was April of 2022, flying back from Charlotte for a trip. But even more recent than that was coming home from Disney World, where our flight was delayed 3 hours. We had a lot of turbulence, and I got sick around 1 o'clock in the morning. So that streak was over. I'll be flying again in a few weeks somewhere else. So hopefully I can start a new streak of not getting sick on an airplane. We'll see what happens. But it's one of those things where, the joke is always, it's been, 0 days since the last incident. So right now it's been 0 flights since the last incident. So hopefully we can keep this going. Hopefully, or actually restart it, I guess, and see what happens. I don't know. It's not a fun experience. I'm sure it's not a fun experience to be around me when this happens either. But life goes on. It is what it is. I know my limitations, and let's just hope for the best going forward, right? So that is that. I did watch a lot of Love is Blind, season 8 on one of these trips, flights, stuff like that. Reality shows are fun. I do enjoy some. Most I don't really get too into, whatever. Like years ago, I would watch Tough Enough, which was like a wrestling reality show, The Ultimate Fighter. But then one of my friends at work, Jamie, she years ago got me into Love is Blind, which is a really, really bizarre but out there reality show. I'm sure some of you know what I'm talking about. And some of you are just rolling your eyes at me. So what I did want to say was I'm not going to talk too much about that or really much at all, because in a few weeks, my goal is I've got scheduled my friend Jamie to talk about the most recent season of Love is Blind. So we're going to talk about it in detail, probably our history getting into it, what the season's about, and just how nuts and crazy it is. Like watching these shows, I watch them and I'm like, how could anybody go into this kind of a show with the thought that I'm going to get married to somebody I've never met before in like 2 or 3 weeks? You always wonder, are they going to these shows, because they really want to find love, or if they just want to get famous and such? It's probably, a little of each, I guess. But we'll dig a lot deeper into that one in a few weeks when Jamie is my guest. What else do we want to talk about? So during the break, also something else that I did as well was I went to Rutgers College. No, I didn't go to get a degree. I got that years ago. But I met up with my wife for lunch at Rutgers. And for me, it's always funny just seeing how different Rutgers College in New Brunswick is every time I go there. So I graduated from Rutgers College back in, I guess, technically December of 99, but my graduation was May of 2000, as I stayed an extra semester to get a second major. Not important for the story. In any event, as some of you may have seen on social media, and probably the rest of you didn't, I did attend my graduation back in May of 2000. Weirdly, and this is kind of goes into another story I'm going to get into eventually about how the universe sometimes beta tests things on me, I like to say. And, it's just weird things happen in really random situations. So, most colleges for graduation is either in the stadium or it's in an open field and you're sitting there, you have a great view or not. But either way, you're not obstructed. It's not the old, in a baseball stadium behind a pillar or something like that. But that was exactly what happened to me at my college graduation. So I graduated from Rutgers College. Our graduation was in May of 2000. It was on a field over by, like, if you know New Brunswick and Rutgers College, Scott Hall. There's a whole area there where there's like, not Scott Hall the wrestler, but Scott Hall the building always cracks me up. There's, it's an open field. There's lots going on. Like in the fall, they have like the activities fair, like picture Pitch Perfect if you've seen it before, where they have the activities fair like out on like, the green. Same concept. In any event, my graduation, I was literally sat behind a tree. So, lots of chairs, thousands of people sitting. And for some reason, I guess, I mean, alphabetically at S, I'd be in the very back, which makes sense. But for some reason, they decided that, seating somebody literally or directly behind a tree was the logical thing to do, right? After, 4+ years of going to school there, working hard, you know, for the most part, and, earning the degree, I got to sit there for 3 or 4 hours directly behind a tree. And when I say directly behind a tree, I mean, like I was in the chair and like my knees were like into the tree. Like that's just the way that my seat was sat, which is very, very strange. So, long story short, I know too late. Beth and I went to lunch in the area, checked out some stuff. And at the end of our walk around Rutgers campus, we saw the area where I graduated. And weirdly enough, the tree that I sat behind was recently cut down. So I made jokes on social media about the fact that like this was, Rutgers finally giving back to me, the universe kind of finally giving me my due and kind of making up for what happened years ago. The tree was finally punished. Rutgers did the right thing. Justice was served, right? The tree's not there anymore. So it is what it is. This is a weird thing. Obviously I'm making a joke about, the universe pushing back and get rid of the tree. I do still find it weird that I got literally sat behind the tree. Like I have a picture that I took at my graduation, which shows, people sitting all over the place and literally straight on to showing the tree. So what I did after I took that trip around Rutgers was I put that picture next to the picture of me pointing at where the tree used to be. And it's one of those things where like you look at the ground and like, the roots are freshly cleared. There's grass circle around the area where the tree was, but like there's definitely soil there where the tree had been previously. So it's a funny thing, kind of is what it is. I guess, I don't know. Something else I did want to mention was a few weeks ago, I think it was in the episode with Lithia, I believe it was episode 36. I had gone on a huge rant about how, by far the optometrist is my least favorite doctor's appointment to go to. I was talking about how, it's the highest pressure because it's something I have to make decisions on my own and you can't just be passive and let things go. So later that week, both a friend of mine, Natalie Castillo, and her sister Diana, apparently listened to that episode of the podcast and were laughing pretty hard at that whole rant that I had, which I appreciated. And, shout out to Natalie and to Diana. A few days later, Natalie actually took her dad to the eye doctor. So Natalie's probably, I'm not going to age her, but her father is, let's say, probably 60s or 70s, give or take, just making the number up. I'm not really sure. So she took him to the eye doctor. And she said that while she was standing there with him at the eye doctor, as the optometrist was saying, which one looks better, 1 or 2, 1 or 3, 2 or 4, she just lost it, was cracking up hysterically, thinking about what I just talked about a few days earlier. And she just had my voice in her head the entire time. And then she sent me a picture of her dad at the optometrist, which I ended up posting on the social medias for this podcast. So first of all, it's a very real situation. Again, it's not just me, I guess. But secondly, when my story is very similar to someone else's story, I just crack up at that. I think it's very, very funny. I was very much entertained and really, really enjoyed seeing the text from Natalie. And for the record, I did ask her permission before posting the picture as well as the text from her as well. So again, shout out to Natalie and her family. Really loved it. Really, really funny. Great stuff. What else do we want to talk about this week? Okay. So I mentioned earlier about how the universe oftentimes, in my opinion, beta tests things on me. So, as an example, I mentioned the tree, sitting behind the tree at graduation. So when I say the universe beta tests things on me, I mean, so I'm 47 years old and I've had a lot of weird things happen in my life. Some weird, really, really good, and some weird, really, really not so much. And some weird, kind of neutral-ish or whatever, right? Here's some examples. So obviously we can start off with the tree from graduation. Very weird, very small sample size of people that have experienced that or anything quite like that. Other examples. So I went to a wrestling show back in 1998, ECW Wrestling in Philadelphia. I'm not sure if I shared the story on the air before. If I have, you can fast forward it. If not, listen to it. It'll be pretty quick, I'm sure. One of the wrestlers by the name of Spike Dudley drank a beer. So he basically he drank the entire beer very quickly. And then, he fell down because that was the act he was playing. And then he threw the beer can, the empty can, into the crowd. Now, the beer can weirdly landed, or didn't land, but came right to where I was. I put my hand up in the air and caught it. Somehow I caught it with my finger in the hole of the beer can. Someone sitting 2 seats away from me tried ripping the beer can away from me, sliced my finger open, and I needed stitches to fix up my finger. Very, very weird situation. I mean, what are the chances that the beer can came to me? what are the chances that I caught it with my finger in the hole? Like, I don't even know how many times you have to try to actually make that happen. And then at the same time, someone else tried to take it from me and my finger got sliced open. Very weird, very different. I don't know. Then there's like the bizarre kinds of things like, I don't know, a while back at work, uh, out of nowhere, my laptop for work just stopped letting me log into it. Apparently, they decided arbitrarily that my work passcode for my laptop wasn't strong enough, despite the fact that months earlier, when I changed my passcode, it hit all the requirements. Letters, numbers, capitals, symbols, whatever else like that. Just randomly, it just stopped working. Someone decided it wasn't good enough. I don't know. Weird things happen, I guess. I never heard of anybody else happening too. I fixed it, went to IT, but I don't know. Sometimes things just jump at me or whatever. I mean, there's a story with the two Jeff Seltzers, right? Like, what are the chances that somebody, and Jeff Seltzer is not a very common name, but the chances that another person with the same name lived 2 towns away and was fantastic in a sport that I was not good at, yet I tried anyway. Like, things like that are just kind of weird, right? I don't know. The fact that like I get so motion sick in so many different things. Like, I've done research in terms of my level of motion sickness is such an anomaly that like most people in life just don't have it. I did research that said motion sickness tends to lean more or skew more towards females, tends to skew more towards younger people. I am neither a younger person nor a female, but I probably have one of the worst motion sickness levels of most people in the world at this point. I would say, like, if you were to rank everybody in the world and say who's the most motion sick, I'm not saying I'd be number one or number two, but I've got to be in the top like 5 or 10%, right? Like, as I mentioned earlier, most people have never thrown up on an airplane. I've easily thrown up on an airplane 2 dozen times in my life. Like, it's just not something that most people experience. And thankfully, most people don't ever have to experience that. But I'm in a very, weird situation like that. On the flip side, I mean, from a good way perspective, like, I've been very fortunate in a weird way that like I went to a different wrestling show in 1998, WWF Raw at the time. Uh, I got on TV, and about 6 months later, out of everybody at every wrestling show, I was the only non-wrestler they put into a commercial. Like, they found like a 2-second clip of me that they liked, and I was in it. What are the chances of that happening, right? So this is kind of the universe going the other way, and maybe thanking me for things that I've done or offsetting some of the negative stuff that's happened. I don't know. Life is weird in terms of that. Another thing that happened recently. So speaking of wrestling as well, with that, Stephanie McMahon, daughter of Vince McMahon, one of the former owners of WWE, she recently came out with a podcast called "What's Your Story" with Stephanie McMahon. Which, again, as soon as that happened, I posted on social media just about how the funniness about that is, right. The fact that obviously they have no idea who I am, but my podcast is called "Everybody Has a Story" with Jeff Seltzer. She has a podcast called "What's Your Story" with Stephanie McMahon. So I would love an overlap or kind of some kind of like a combination podcast between us. Obviously, it would never happen, but it's just very, very funny. If anybody wants to sue WWE on my behalf and say they stole my name, that's great. Otherwise, kind of is what it is. Last thing that I could think of off the top of my head in terms of weird things that have happened is this will get into my next topic of getting laid off from work. So it's a very weird situation where 10 years ago I worked for Post Cereal. Post Foods, they Fruity Pebbles, Honey Bunches of Oats, Honeycomb, all sorts of cereals. We as a company bought a smaller cereal company, which generally, and I've said before, I think usually is a good thing, right? Usually when you buy a smaller company, you end up running the business and things go well. But after we bought that smaller company, they closed the New Jersey office, moved everything to Minnesota, and laid us all off. That's something that I've never heard of happen before and haven't seen happen since. Very, very strange. With that said, this is so as we're sitting in May of 2025, that post story of us getting let go was exactly 10 years ago this month. They communicated to us on May 15th, 2015, that anybody who wants to move to Minnesota can keep their job. Anybody who does not want to move to Minnesota will get a very handsome package of severance, retention, stuff like that. So very, very weird. I'd say it definitely paid off for me in a weird way, financially, obviously, but I did have a big lesson that I learned from it. So let's fast forward about 7 months later. So they told us in May of 2015 that we were all getting let go. Various dates would be gone by. My date was December of 2015. So I stayed around another 7 months or so, and I had to get the money that they offered us on the way out. Um, Big lesson that I learned in the situation. So they paid us enough on the way out that I really didn't have to work on day one. I could have taken 6 months or a year off with that job, kind of like relaxed, enjoyed life a little bit, and kind of taken my time to find something. For me, I was of the mindset that I had to find a job like as soon as possible. At that point, so 10 years ago, I was 37 years old. I had been working basically consistently since the age of 16. So you're talking at that point, it was, roughly 20 years or so that I had always been employed somewhere. So for me, the thought of not having a job felt very weird and I felt very uncomfortable with that. So in December of 2015, I did not have a job yet. I unfortunately decided to, as I was looking, there was a company that offered me a job. I unfortunately did accept the job, and I worked there for about 13 months. I'm not looking to name drop or say anything bad about any specific company. You can check on LinkedIn if you want to know who the company is. I'm not going to really talk about them specifically. But what I will say is I probably should not have accepted that job offer, as it was not a situation that I ended up being happy with. Years earlier, I heard, let's say, not so great things about that company. And all along, I said I would never go to that company. But because I was, let's say, desperate at that time, I ended up accepting a job at that company. And that's kind of the way that it went. 13 months later, I ended up finding a role somewhere else, which ended up working out a lot better, which led to me to where I am today. But with everything that happens in life, I try to look back. Professionally, we call it an after action report. Try to understand, okay, so what happened? What can I learn from it? Good things, bad things, neutral things. Um, you know, that's generally my mindset in life is every experience in life, whether it's good or it's bad or it's neutral, how do we make the most of it? How do I look at it and say, what went right, what went wrong, and what can I learn from that situation as a whole? I always tell people I'm willing to make any mistake once, but I try not to make any mistake twice, right? I'm trying to learn my lesson. I'm trying to see how I can do it better, how I can maximize it, and stuff like that. So, in hindsight, if I were to get let go from a company and I got a decent enough, package on the way out, I would not necessarily accept the first offer that I got. Uh, you know, Especially if it was an offer that I had previously told myself I would never accept. So it is what it is. I mean, it's not right or it's not wrong. At the time, I didn't know, right? Mentally, it's a very weird thing when you get laid off from a company. So that was that. What I will say is, with this being, as I mentioned before, the 10-year post anniversary or 10 years since we were communicated, I did reach out. There's a Facebook group for when I worked at Post Foods with a lot of the people that I used to work with. I did reach out to see if anybody else wanted to share their stories or experiences, either working there or what's happened to them since. Nobody seemed interested in it, which is totally fine. I mean, that's their prerogative. That's their story. I've had many people in life that I've reached out to talk about different things, and a lot of people just podcasts aren't for them. They're not interested. They just don't want to get it out there or whatever. So, if anybody from my old company at Post Foods is listening, hey, what's up? Hope everything is going well, and obviously great things for the future for everybody here. So that was that. Very weird times, very weird situations, but what can you do? I did want to talk about briefly what I have coming up the next few weeks. So, as I mentioned earlier in the show, I spent a decent amount of time talking, reaching out to people during the break in terms of who wants to, who can come on the show, what I can do. So, I did want to talk about a few different things. So, over the next few weeks, like I said, there's somebody that from a conference that I had met a few weeks ago that I have on the show probably next week. Talking to hopefully Jamie in a few weeks about Love is Blind. Last year, I did have an episode about my week in Philadelphia with my buddies Daniel and Steve about our week in Philadelphia for WrestleMania. So while I didn't get to go to WrestleMania this year, my friend Daniel and my buddy Marcus both did go, and it was in Las Vegas. So putting together a similar episode with them, talking about what what they did, what they experienced. And for me, it'll be a different situation because last time I was part of the story. This time I'll be more of the moderator, trying to pull out of them what happened, what they experienced, what they enjoyed, what the best parts were, that kind of stuff. I have a bunch of other episodes coming up after that as well. Don't want to kind of share too much, I guess, because in case some of them fall through, kind of is what it is. But what I did want to also talk about very briefly here is a couple of sponsorship opportunities that I am working on. So as all of you probably remember, back in January, Everybody Has a Story with Jeff Seltzer sponsored a wrestling show. So PWJ, they had their first show in Ridgefield Park, New Jersey at the Mecca back in January, recorded a whole episode from the show, which was great. Interviewed 17 different people over the course of like 5 hours. It was an awesome one. So 2 shows. I'm actually going to be sponsoring 2 upcoming wrestling shows once again. So the first one is a new one. They reached out to me via Instagram, and we talked back and forth. Seemed like a great opportunity, so we're going to do this one. So it's Shadow Wrestling. It's May 25th, also at the Mecca in Ridgefield Park, New Jersey. So I'm sponsoring a match. Really excited about that. But additionally, I'll be doing commentary over a match. So I'm really, really excited about that. As part of the sponsorship, I get to talk about, I guess basically announcing during the match, which is cool. I get to interview a couple of the wrestlers, walk around, kind of have fun at the show. So I'll be going to that show. I'm not sure how much content I'm going to get, but I'm sure I'll be talking about it quite a bit over the next few weeks, as that show is on May 25th. So if you live in Central or North Jersey and you're interested in going to an independent wrestling show on May 25th, Shadow Wrestling will be live at the Mecca in Ridgefield Park, New Jersey. Additionally, as I've mentioned previously, I will be sponsoring PWJ2. PWJ's second show will be July 27th. Same building, the Mecca in Ridgefield Park, New Jersey. Running a similar situation I had last time. I'm sponsoring a match. Additionally, I'll be recording an episode of the podcast during the pre-show. So once again, I have a setup there. Don't know what's going to look like. Hopefully it'll be similar. Hopefully I get a lot of people who want to come over and talk. A lot of recordings, hopefully some friends, some fans, some wrestlers, maybe some referees again. We'll see what happens. So that'll be a lot of fun. Last thing I wanted to call out before we call it a day for this episode is my younger daughter, Allison. She's trying to become a bit of an entrepreneur here. So as I mentioned in the past, we are working on some merch. She got a Cricut, which she's really excited about. She can now make shirts and sweatshirts and stuff like that. So we are finalizing what a podcast t-shirt would look like. So if you do have an interest in getting a t-shirt, sweatshirt, any kind of merch, hit me up on Instagram at Everybody Has a Story Pod or at Seltzer77. Let me know. We have some potential pre-orders from when we teased this out a few months ago. So I'll be reaching out to those people very soon. But if you have an interest, let me know. We'll need your size for the shirt. Additionally, it'll probably be roughly $20 per t-shirt, $45 for a sweatshirt if that's what we do. But really, really excited to be able to get some merch out there. I was paying a lot of money from like online t-shirt vendors. So now that Allison can make it, it'll probably be a little bit cheaper and a little bit of a better situation. Probably also a little bit more on demand in terms of how quickly we can make it. Additionally, she is working on a sports photography business. So if you get a chance, go on Instagram and follow at Shots by Seltzer. That's SHOTZ by Seltzer. She has all sorts of sports photography. Mostly it's high school sports at this point. But she's really trying to see what opportunities she can get. If you're in, let's say, North Jersey and you're looking to have sports photography done for your family, your friends, whatever else like that, definitely either reach out to myself or reach out to her at Shots by Seltzer. It's Shots with a Z by Seltzer. She's really excited. She's trying different things, which I think is really awesome to see. I'm trying to see how I can mentor her from terms of figuring out the financials behind it, how to make it work. She's a pretty cool camera. So lots of fun things. It should be really, really good. Reminder to everybody, the show's Instagram is at Everybody Has a Story Pod. You can find the show on YouTube at Everybody Has a Story Pod. My personal Instagram is at Seltzer77. You can reach the show directly via email at everybodyhasastorypod@gmail.com. For all things Jeff Seltzer, as always, you can find me over at jeffseltzer.com. Still the official / unofficial sponsor of the show. Reminder to everybody, we are available on all podcast platforms. So once again, we're on Spotify and YouTube and video. From an audio perspective, we're in those 2 locations. We're also on Apple, iHeartRadio, Amazon, Pandora, pretty much anywhere you can find a podcast, you can find Everybody Has a Story with Jeff Seltzer. One last thing I wanted to bring up, I guess before closing out with the song once again, just because it's such a cool song, thanks again to Marcus, is the company that I work for, and again, without naming them, one of the core values that we have is something called keeping it human. I think when Tina Tonelli was on about a month ago or so, we briefly talked about it, but I really just, things are happening in various people's lives, and I just want to kind of remind people that you don't know what other people are going through. They might, have someone who's sick in their family. They might be having, all sorts of challenges, relationships, whatever else like that. So try to give people grace, try to, take a step back. And if someone doesn't feel right or seem right, give them some space, or ask them like, hey, how can I best support you? Right. Things like that. For the most part, if somebody's acting weird or out of character, don't be a jerk to them. Try to see how you can help them out. Right. Professionally, it's along the lines of, if somebody's always a great employee, but they're having a bad day, we all have bad days. We're all human. So kind of give them some space. But even personally, right? Like if you've had a friend or a family member who's always been great, fantastic, emotionally there for you and stuff like that, and like one day they're not, look for trends, right? If it's like a day or two or short or midterm or whatever, figure out how you can work through it. But with that said, if somebody, let's say, long term is just not right for you, treats you poorly, or just doesn't have the correct emotional intelligence for what you're looking for, it's okay to take a step away. And when they're ready, hopefully they come back and hopefully they go back to their authentic self, or however they were, right? It's never easy, especially if it's like a close friend or somebody in your family that, treats you poorly, or, gives you, nonsense in life, whatever else like that. But at the end of the day, it's important for your own mental health to kind of like make sure that you understand like what your emotional needs are, where you are, what you need, and stuff like that. I say this as one of my friends is a little sick, and I'm hopeful that he does get better and gets a full recovery. Things happen in life, things happen, in weird times, weird places, whatever. So I'm hopeful for the best. I don't really want to end on a down note here, but I do hope for positive and great things. And all I can do as a friend is to try to, be the best friend that I can be, offer support. And when support's needed or accepted, be there. And if the person at the time, doesn't need or want support, that's totally fine as well, right? We all experience and deal with things in different ways. We all grieve in different ways. But, as a good friend and as somebody that's, been there for a long time, just make sure that they know that, you're there for them, and anything they need, they can reach out for. So with that said, I did want to, say thank you again to everybody for listening to the show, watching the show, consuming the show however you did, checking me out on Instagram, on the various platforms, stuff like that. And I hope everybody has an amazing week. We'll have another episode next week. Hopefully I should be, weekly for the next at least 2 months or so, leading into the 1-year anniversary, which I have some pretty cool stuff that I'm working on lining up going to that. So have an amazing week. Reach out if you have anything that you want to talk about, if you want to be a guest or whatever else. But outside of that, hope all is well and best wishes.
Everybody has a story with Jeff Seltzer. 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 Everybody has a story with Jeff Seltzer.